Hey, this is Buffy Snell. I'm out here on Halloween Eve and we are at the FBI in Salt Lake City, and I'm here with Micheal Jarman. He's holding a sign here. This is his phone number. He'd like Robert Bowles to call him, and I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about why he's out here today.
Thanks, Buffy. Yeah, as a targeted parent, I learned a lot about something that is worse than corruption happening not just here in Utah but across the USA. And rather than reacted rage and fury and all the stuff, I thought, this is bigger and needs a more delicate hand. So I started holding these signs up. And the more I've held these signs up, the more I've been retaliated against. But the more I've been retaliated against, the more I've learned. And so why I'm here today is because I first held signs up here at the Utah FBI regional office. And this is the office for all of Utah, Montana, Wyoming. This covers most of the West. And I started doing that 2 years ago, and I came out here every day for a long time, and no one would ever talk to me or even take my report. So I stopped coming out. But about a month ago, I learned that this regional office of the FBI got a new director named Robert Bowles. And so I thought, okay, this might be a chance to get someone to talk to me about what I've learned and discovered through all this. So I came out on September 16th with this sign and left a report, and nothing happened. So here I am on Halloween, October 31st, and holding this sign again. I came out here a couple days ago, left a report. I told them I would be out here, and still no calls or anything. But where this goes, it is worse than corruption. It is worse than evil, because what is really happening, and it goes back more than 40 years, is that people, whether it was with Utah or other states, they created these federal subsidies worth billions of dollars that could be stolen from by instigating terror into families, parents and children, rather than implementing constructive solutions. So when families, moms and dads encounter the challenges of life, rather than saying, okay, how can we make this healthy for kids, these corrupt attorneys, guardian ad litems, judges, legislatures, members of the legislature, governors, attorney generals, mayors, police chiefs, they've all kind of bought into this scheme where they allow the courts to instigate terror and to instigate problems and to instigate challenges. They will threaten one parent to make false reports against the other parents and false claims. They'll threaten one parent to break court orders hundreds of times. And they do that because it's the children they're really after. And they know that if they can eliminate one parent, then it's much easier to eliminate the other parent. And that's why this isn't about father's rights. It's not about mother's rights. It's not about extended family rights. It's about these groups, these cabals who are instigating these atrocities into the lives of Utahns and millions of Americans. And some numbers that show how big this is that through this process, I discovered that here in Utah, there's a list with more than 12,000 children's names on it. And these are children who've been targeted and made absentee from one or both parents in the different stages. And even more gut-wrenching is that the more I've exposed about this, the more they've retaliated against me. And that includes, last year they tried swatting me 5 times, and then they unlawfully imprisoned me. I'll wait for this diesel to go by. But during those 5 times of trying to swat me from February to August, they also unlawfully imprisoned me for 2 months and 8 days. And they did it through more forgeries. There's indisputable proof of this. But it just shows how when these corrupt judges do this and a parent survives, they then involve corrupt cops and other corrupt elements to try and death death bait the parent, to suicide bait the parent, to rage bait the parent, and all these terrors to try and make that parent just go away. And when that doesn't work, then they'll unlawfully imprison the parent. And there are mothers and fathers all around the country who could speak to this, who've experienced this, especially anyone who uses hashtag family court, hashtag gag order, hashtag parental alienation. Any of this you can watch, and any parent who posts their story, the post is almost immediately deleted, their account gets shadow banned.
Wow.
Yeah, and especially last year because it was an election year, there's so much of this that these different states, especially Utah, are trying to keep hidden. But that's why they were going so hard to delete these accounts, to imprison people like me. And they did it in such a sloppy way too. While I was there, they tried threatening me with 14 years of prison, and I told them that their charges were too sloppily filed and it wasn't going to hold up. And so eventually I got out. It took 2 months and 8 days, but then they tried swatting me 2 more times. So what this really is it is the gateway to child trafficking in the USA. And parts of the FBI have published reports saying that there are 175,000 American children in sex trafficking every year, but they don't talk about this gateway to child trafficking that is happening in all the states. And there's even an article in Rolling Stone magazine from January 2024 where they interviewed a retired FBI female who had done sex trafficking for 20 years, and she talks about these numbers and that how 175,000 of these victims of sex trafficking come from foster care. But even in that article and across the FBI, they don't acknowledge that is this gateway to child trafficking, putting all these numbers of children unlawfully into the foster cares. And that then as the parents are eliminated, that's what allows the child to then be taken into sex trafficking or worse. And the worst part is the ritual abuse. I've also learned that there's pharmaceutical drug testing where they will say, hey, we want to test a new drug on 10,000 kids. Well, we've got hundreds of thousands of kids in foster care. Let's use 10,000 of them. And they don't care if the kids die, because what's worse is if the kids do die, then the state can collect even more money through faulty insurance schemes and whatnot. And what gets really bad here in Utah is about 12 years ago, they created 10 offices to pose as judges just to target and instigate this, to steal those hundreds of millions of dollars. And that's why the state of Utah is so desperate to keep all this hidden and why they keep doing such counterintuitive things. But even since then, they immediately staffed those 10 offices with members of a deceptive, superficial private association. That association is known as the Association of Family and Conciliation Courts. They call it the AFCC. You'll hear that all around. There was even a lady named Nancy Schaefer who was a member of the Georgia legislature, and 14 years ago she tried exposing parts of this that she had learned without learning how deep it goes to Utah and imposters hiding here in Utah. And her husband they were found dead by gunshot in their home, and they were both in their 70s. So it kind of shows that there's a handful of states, there's about 30 or 40 states who have really figured this out and figured that if they just look the other way and if they let corruption breed and spawn, that these judges, these attorneys, the psychologists who are all members of the AFCC will collude and populate this list with children's names, and then they don't care what happens to the children. There's even indications that they use state-funded daycares and even some programs in elementary schools to actually identify which children to target. And it's not just poor kids. It especially can be families who are wealthy because there's so much to take from the parents as the parents are eliminated. They steal home equity. They'll commit forgeries. They'll forge adoptions. They'll forge guardianship. They'll forge conservatorship. They'll forge psychological evaluations. And then if all that fails and a parent still is around, they'll use gag orders. and there's parents out there who want to talk about this but can't, because if they do, they'll be thrown in prison for another year.
Wow.
So I was really shocked to learn that even the FBI will look the other way, but it shows Americans that the FBI is not what we've been taught it is. And I mean, here's a guy, like I've been here for 2-3 hours today already. My phone number, there's been a couple hundred cars come and go, and no one is going to call me. They never have, they never will. And
If Robert Bowles called you, what would you like him to do about the situation?
Well, that's a great question. So as part of this, I filed a federal lawsuit on October 17th, naming the corrupt police officers who were involved in unlawfully arresting me, because the charges they forged to do that were crazy. And I think what was really happening is they had baited me to the Matheson courthouse in the hopes that I would get to see my kids. And then while I was there, they tried taking me into a darkened courtroom. And these were cops from West Valley City who, for some reason, in Salt Lake City, trying to get me into this courtroom. And everyone here in Utah, we know that West Valley City has a habit of executing people. There's a video on my Linktree, which is linktree.com/Operation Walkout, where from 2019, the West Valley cops took a guy into their basement, antagonized him for 2 hours, and when he stood up, they shot him in the head and killed him, even though he was handcuffed. And they have a tricky way to do that. They'll get so close that their body cameras are covered, and then they can say, oh, he's grabbing my gun. And that actually shows him be murdered. It shows the guy die on that video. PBS Frontline published that. But so my lawsuit is, I had to file it because the current government shut down. So it's 417 pages long. I wanted to edit it and make it shorter, but I filed it the way it is, so I at least have that case number. Regardless of what happens to me now, it's in the federal books. And but to try and help other people process parts of this without all the legalese and all the federal code, I have a 20-page summary that I also post at Linktree /Operation Walkout. And that is where I summarize how Utah has created these offices to target this, how Utah has stolen billions of dollars, how over the past 12 years they've used certain members of the state legislature to pass deceptive laws that actually enable this corruption. It enables corrupt cops, corrupt judges, corrupt attorneys, corrupt psychologists. It allows the state to accept money from the feds on behalf of the targeted children, with or without the children knowing. And when I know a lot of this sounds unbelievable, but what shows anyone that all this is true is that they do all this without leaving a lawful paper trail that you're supposed to leave if you're going to temporarily separate a child from one or both parents. There should be all sorts of steps that you can look in the docket and say, okay, this happened. But for me, in my experience with my two daughters, it happened without notice. It was completely unlawful, and it was based on forgeries. And I know that my daughter's moms were threatened to go along with it. And that's why they have, and that's why I haven't heard from them in years. I don't know where my 9-year-old is. It's been 2 years since I've heard anything about her. The corrupt cops, the corrupt cabals told me if they find out that if I try to look for my daughter, they said they'll throw me in jail again. And my other daughter, it's the same thing, but with her it's been 4 years, and there's more forgeries. I literally have proof of a forgery committed by a corrupt attorney associated with the AFCC. The judge on the case, the commissioner, all that, I have indisputable proof of the mechanism. And part of that is because once I realized 2 years ago that even the FBI was in on it, and that the Utah FBI is hiding this gateway to child trafficking, I started using myself as bait to draw these people out, to draw fire, like Pete Hegseth said. I threw myself under the bus and I drew that fire, and as they've attacked me with their forgeries and their fabricated psychological evaluations, I've been able to put all this together. So although my federal lawsuit only names a few people as defendants, it lists the whole mechanism from the governor's office down, and has more than 80 names in there of who has either done this commissively or allowed it omissively. And it's there, and these patterns are replicated throughout the country. There's parents everywhere. Millions of parents haven't survived, but through the good parts of social media, parents are learning what they are really surviving. And they are learning that it is not their fault, but it is their opportunity. And the most important thing they can do is to keep breathing, to just keep breathing, because breath is the last thing these cabals want them to have. Because with every breath, we are beating them at their own game, and they know it. And the more people who keep breathing, the more voices there will be, and the more voices there are, the more likely it is that smart people in other places will begin listening to this, even at the federal level. And that's why also in my federal lawsuit, because the federal level hasn't responded to me, I've listed people at the federal level for failure to act, so that if they don't take steps to come to Utah and fix this and create a model for other states, that they'll be held accountable. Whether that's the Attorney General, the Secretary of State, the Speaker of the House, the Vice President, the President. I've lawfully served these papers there so that all those offices have had the opportunity to know about that, as a way for me to say, hey, you guys, this is worse than evil, it's worse than corruption. It really seems to be an active coup here in Utah, that they're trying to take over the US government so they can keep all this hidden. And so that's why. And so I have no choice now but to keep coming out here and at least holding signs up until I can get someone's attention who has the courage, who has the balls to hear this and realize that this is what is destroying the USA. It's because they are disassembling families, they're monetizing children and parents, and no one is stopping them. And from what I see in other aspects I've developed, a lot of it all comes back to Utah. For people who want to blame things on Israel or Iran or Iraq, China, no. If it goes through that, it all comes back to what is hiding behind Utah, and I'm looking forward to when I can share that with the right people.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I hope he'll call you.
I really hope he will too. I really hope he will too. I'm not expecting him to. But I guess that says that if he doesn't, he's either an imposter too or a scapegoat and doesn't know it. And unfortunately, here in Utah, since September 10th, we've learned that throughout Utah, from the governor's office down, throughout federal levels of the FBI and beyond, there are a lot of people in positions that are scapegoats, whether they know it or not. They are being scapegoated to look the other way, to allow this gateway to child trafficking to keep going, to keep being hidden, to keep allowing the states to steal these hundreds of millions of dollars, and then to involve other layers. And that's kind of where we're at today at this moment in time, is learning that what we thought, when we were little kids and our beautiful kindergarten teachers were teaching us about the USA, we're learning that was a lie, but that is also our opportunity to create the country that we want and that we deserve and that the world deserves. So
thank you for standing.
Well, thank you. I know you drove an hour. You heard courageous. I was here. You called me and you said, I'm coming to you to make a video. And so I'm so thrilled that someone heard and they dropped what they were doing and they drove an hour. Like, I'm going to start bawling because, it just shows that there are other people, other voices, other survivors, and other conquerors. So I can't tell you how grateful I am for you to come out and make this video of me. And maybe with a little luck, I'm actually going to be here next Friday, whatever that is. Is that November 6th or 7th? I don't know, I think. But I'll be here next Friday too, probably between 2 and 5.
Okay.
And who knows, maybe this will become a daily thing. There's a lot of room to park motor homes around this area. I have some inflatable costumes. Maybe this will be a daily thing, and we'll just keep making this noise. And this here at the ground zero of terror, this will become the ground zero of advocacy and for ending it all.
Great, thank you.